Friends is this concept that I came up with laying in bed one night. I have all these close friends who have these wonderful stories that can help change the world, life experiences that can help other people believe in themselves, hold tight to their dreams and make their dreams reality. On Feeling Friends, we talk about God, we talk about love, relationships. I have celebrity friends, I have non-celebrity friends. I have church members, family members. But when you watch and listen to Feeling Friends, you will learn and you will laugh. It's a community of friends helping to build each other up. So tune in to Feeling Friends every Sunday on WHCR 90.3 FM, or you can catch me on YouTube at Feeling Friends Radio. All right, I'll see you there. WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. What's up, everybody? It's me, Phil, and I'm so happy to be back live on air with you, my friends. I've got a great friend here in the studio on YouTube today. We're on live here on YouTube, and we're playing live in the station right now here on Sundays. But listen, I've got a great friend, Karla. She's going to come in live in the studio. We're going to talk about so many pressing issues in America right now. And I believe one of the main issues that's pressing America, we're going to talk about it right here live on air with you, my friends. So without further ado, I'm going to bring my friend Karla into the stage. Hey, Karla, how are you, my friend?
Hi, Phil. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for your breath of fresh air. That's who you've been for me this past year. I believe it's been a year. I've only been in school for you for a year.
Oh my goodness, yes, it's been a year.
It's like, I don't know what's going on. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, Well, amongst all the things that are happening. Yes.
Yes. So go ahead, tell the people who you are. Just give people a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, a little bit about me. My name is Karla. I am from Lima, Peru. I was born there. I moved to the U.S. When I was almost 12, 11 years old, but I'm almost 12. And I lived in the Midwest for most of that time until the last couple of years when I moved to New York to go to Union Theological Seminary, where I met Phil. And then, so a little bit of my work is that, I honestly, and maybe, I don't know if this is, I think sometimes it kind of falls on you, but for a long time, I've been in the immigration spaces, right? Immigration rights, immigration justice. And it kind of like fell upon me, right? Because of my life, my circumstances. And in that process, I became an activist, specifically regarding first just immigration rights. But of course, in that, once you start learning the ways that systemic oppression works and how it's all connected, it's a little bit harder to separate what I'm advocating for, because in so many ways, and at the end of the day, I'm advocating for human rights, and and for the environment, for all those things, because they're all everything. We're so connected, right? And so so I think in the last 10 years, my work has shifted and grown and changed, and so I am for sure an immigration rights advocate, but also I very much care for, like I've worked in the animal welfare activist space in the last few years. And then in recent time, I'm mostly focused on finishing my master's at Union. So that's been almost a little bit of a break, but not really, because, in those spaces, we're still in very much activist spaces. So
it's a never ending cycle, because as social justice activists, it's nonstop. Even if it's just the freedom in the church to get people liberated in their minds, that is a constant work. Wouldn't you say?
No, yes, absolutely. I agree.
Let's go back to immigration. You brought up immigration. It's such a huge topic in America. Before we get to the meat of it, I want you to talk about your experience as a young person. You have a very great story about you coming here, and you didn't really speak English that well, correct?
But no, not at all, actually.
You didn't speak it at all. And tell us a story about how you and your sister, how you all learned English.
Yeah, so when I moved here, I basically knew the colors in English, the numbers, and like, and where to find the restroom. very urgent things.
Uh-huh.
And so we both started in school. My sister is younger than me, and so we started in a public school. And also for context, in Peru, we grew up going to private Christian schools,
Mhm.
Protestant Christian schools, because in Peru, public schools are all Catholic.
Okay.
And so, we were kind of in the private school sector, and then we came here, and I mean, it's like culture shock after culture shock, right? Like, we don't speak the language. We go to a public school. We don't understand the systems that are at work at the public schools. And so, yeah, so we basically learn from going to like to from just from being immersed in the culture specifically. I personally, I remember, this is actually, sometimes I forget to tell this because it's also been so long. But in Peru, I actually finished sixth grade
Oh,
because
wow.
of the way that the school year works, because we have flipped seasons from here. So
Okay.
right now we're in summer, they are in fall. No, they are in winter.
The winter. Yeah.
Yep. So we're
Mhm.
going into fall, they're going into spring.
Right.
And
Right.
so I had finished sixth grade when I moved to the US. I came in the middle of the school year for the US. So they put me in sixth grade. And then they were just going to send me off to seventh grade, which at the time was straight into junior high. It wasn't even middle school at the time. It was like junior high. And I remember telling my parents, I don't feel prepared. And also, I was a straight A student in Peru and all those things. And so when I came here, I didn't get the grades that I wanted because I couldn't understand the language. So
Right.
as my parents, I said, hey, I don't want to go to seventh grade. I don't feel ready. So we talked to the principal, and he was so shocked. I remember to this day, he was like, nobody has ever asked me this before. But I asked to be in sixth grade again.
That's insane.
And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was during that year that I learned English, basically,
Right.
because primary school is a way different experience than
Right.
middle
Absolutely.
school.
Totally different experience. Yeah, I can imagine. It's a totally different
Yeah,
way of life.
and so the consistency of having one teacher all the
Mhm.
time and all those things, and that's how I learned English. But I learned it pretty quickly. Pretty much after that, like when I do the math a little bit, I maybe learning, like being able to have a conversation and do homework, and I became a straight A student by the end of that year.
Really.
Yeah, it's a
That's the
little.
drive. It's the drive and tenacity. It's something in you that you say, hey, you come here, I got to do this. I got to make it happen, right?
Yes, yep. And so, yeah, so that's basically how I learned English, was in school with people who took the time. We had an ESL program, and so we would go once or twice a week and sit there with teachers who made a difference in our lives. Yeah.
So let's talk about, that was an amazing experience. Was it a tough time because you all went from Peru to the middle of the Midwest? What was that like?
Yes. Oh, goodness. We actually arrived, I remember, December 15, 2001. So multiple things are happening. It's 3 months after
Mhm.
9/11.
Oh, wow.
So the anti-immigrant, you know,
The way they
kind
feel.
of
Right.
thought and
Mhm.
all of that was already very active and happening.
Right.
So that was one thing. We also, it was the middle of winter, and because our seasons are flipped, we were in the beginning of summer. So we
You all
were
had shorts and things? Or is that what it
well, we knew it was going to be cold, so we were wearing coats, but
Yeah.
our
Mhm.
winter is not the winter, especially like Lima's winter, because other
Oh, yeah.
parts of Peru are very cold,
Mhm.
but on the coast, chill winter. So we
Yeah.
did not have the proper
Is
attire.
it like a LA winter? Like a LA winter, you just need a coat
Yes,
like that?
yes.
Okay. Yeah. Mhm.
Just like it. And
Yeah.
so, we came here with our light jackets,
Right.
and it's freezing.
Ohio is super cold. That is like the Midwest winter. I went to Michigan one time in like
Mhm.
December. It was the coldest cold I had ever been in. So we
Yes.
got to imagine how it is. Yes.
And so, yeah, for sure, it was freezing. I remember I got sick for 2 weeks after we got here, just like all
To
the
get
shock.
adjusted. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, of course it was rough, right? Like,
Mhm.
um being separated from our family. My family's story is a little bit sometimes unique in some spaces, but I mean, I'm sure other people have experienced this too. But we came here on tourist visas,
Okay.
and so when they expire, I became undocumented,
Mhm.
and fairly quickly, maybe like 6 months after being here.
Mhm.
And of course, like at the time, a 12-year-old, I didn't fully grasp what that meant. I just knew certain things, right? Like some of the rules, like especially with 9/11 being, so close,
Mhm.
there were certain things that were happening. And then one of them was that I knew that I wasn't going to get to go back to Peru anytime soon. But my entire family, besides my, like immediate family, but
Mhm.
my all my extended family, my grandmas,
Mhm.
my aunts, my cousins, and like Peruvian culture is very I think it's very similar to Black American culture, where like your aunties are your moms, and
Just
um
one big happy family, like you
yes,
know the
so like,
and your mama, yeah. Yeah,
yes, I
yeah.
have multiple moms. I have
Right,
multiple, my cousins are like my siblings.
right,
And
yes.
so there's that giant separation.
Mhm.
Also, my parents, my dad was a chemical engineer and my mom was a teacher.
Okay.
But my parents were also pastors. And so we left like all, the church, all the church community, all of that is mixed in
Yeah.
that separation, and it was, yeah, it was rough.
So let me ask you this. So why did you all come over here? Was it for work? Was it for a new life? I mean, I've seen pictures. It was really nice in Peru. So why did you all make the move from Peru to Ohio?
Yeah, so of course, like, like a lot of these things I can answer in hindsight,
Yeah.
and at the moment I didn't understand them. One of the things that was happening in Peru in the 90s, so in the 80s there was um a political crisis happening in the country. In
Right.
the 90s, a very like conservative right
Mhm.
president took over.
Mhm.
And first it was like under the guise of democracy, so people voted
Right.
him in, but with corruption and all those things, he had been the president for a long time. And during the 2000s, like, or like late 90s, early 2000s, is when all the scandals started coming out in a way.
Yeah.
But all of that was just very what's the word I'm looking for, the economy crashed out,
Yeah.
basically,
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
both of my parents, who are professionals, who have degrees, all those things, right?
Mhm.
They cannot find a job
Wow.
for their lives. And of course,
That,
like
it
I
was that bad where the economy collapsed. People couldn't work, couldn't find these educated people. It was a tough time for all the Peruvians, right?
Yes, yep. And so a lot of people started migrating and leaving the country. Some people going to different parts of South America, others going to Europe. My dad is also a very skilled musician, and so he actually in Peru he toured a lot with
Okay.
a lot of Peruvian bands, and
Mhm.
so that's how he ended up in the U.S. in the first place.
Okay.
And and now looking back also, I don't know if you ever if you've heard me say this, because I say it all the time, but the United States has the most brilliant PR team in the world.
Mhm.
So
Shout out to the
outside of
PR majors.
the
I'm a PR major, so yeah.
US, yes.
PR major rather. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that there is this sense of outside of the US, and I can't speak for all of Latin America, but
Mhm.
in Peru there is this sense of America being the greatest place in the world,
Right. Right.
where there is no poverty, there is no corruption, there is like, this is like the
This is
sense.
what people think on the outside.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so when my parents are trying to decide where, they
Mhm.
didn't want to move, they didn't want to leave Peru, of course.
Right.
But it was either they found jobs
Mhm.
or we just didn't eat, like, and I have some stories about that, but they're a little more
Absolutely.
traumatic in some senses. Anyway, and so yeah, and so my dad made a decision to move to the US. And my parents were pastors, were
Mhm.
specifically evangelical pastors.
We're
And
gonna talk about that later. That's
yes.
you feel like we're gonna talk about that later. No.
And so my parents made almost like an agreement with God,
Mhm.
and I was a kid, so
Right. Yeah.
but my parents said, my because my dad moved here on December 14th, 2000.
Okay.
And my dad and my mom had decided that if my sister, my mom, and me didn't get our visas in 1 year,
Hmm.
my dad was going to go back to Peru and we were just going to figure it out there, you
Right.
know?
Okay.
And so, my, in a very miraculous way, truly, like I don't really know what other language to use, right?
Mhm.
A very random policy came up, and my dad was able to request that we get our visas,
Wow.
and so we did. And so my dad was here, in December 14, 2000, and we were here December 15, 2001.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like a one of those things where there's some mysticism involved,
Yeah.
maybe,
No,
or
it
maybe
is.
it was luck
Everything
or
for a reason.
whatever.
And maybe what things happen to me in my life, and I'm like, did the Lord do that for me? Did it work out just for me? Sometimes it does, because we never know what the end of the story is going to be. So
Yep.
sometimes it is. We believe in miracles. Let's talk about this idea of people. Now we're living in a very tough society, and I don't want to take from your story,
No,
but
no, no.
and people, America is built on the backs of slaves, on the things of people from Ellis Island, and the people from Ellis Island or wherever, they don't like other immigrants. You know
Yes.
what I'm saying? And the
Yes.
viewers and listeners know what I'm saying. What do you say to those people who are coming here now who want to make a different life for themselves, or how do we deal with this uh, ignorance now? Let's start with that. How
Yeah.
do we deal with this ignorance when
Yeah.
it comes to the immigration system?
Absolutely. I think I would be lying if I
Mhm.
said that my life hasn't been marked by the grief of
Mhm.
the ways that the immigration system continues to fail people.
Mhm.
Um so right now there's so much misinformation about immigration, about who is an immigrant, who isn't an immigrant.
Mhm.
There's also that concept, I don't know if you've heard of people saying, like the United States is built by immigrants, and to me this is a myth,
Mhm.
because it's not true.
Mhm.
The United States was built on stolen land from, you know
Yeah.
indigenous people
Hey.
to North America, to Turtle Island,
Right.
which is the same that happened in Latin America, right? Like, we also, Spaniards also tried to wipe us out. Um, so that's the first thing. The second thing, and very much indigenous people are still here. So,
We're
that's
still here. We're all mixed up.
very much so.
Right.
And then the other thing is that the United States was built by enslaved people.
Mhm.
It was not built by the immigrants who were coming from Europe. It was built by people who were enslaved, Black people who were enslaved,
Black
in
people. Yeah.
yes, like,
Yeah.
so I think that's another thing that I
Mhm.
believe is part of the myth, of
Right.
people saying that immigrants built this country. No,
No.
I think that, and there's so much history depending on where you live, on what country you're coming from, right? Like, at one point, there's parts of the U.S. that were part of Mexico, and so then suddenly there's a lot of people who are Mexican
Mhm.
ethnically,
Right.
but now they are suddenly U.S. American, right? Like U.S.
Mhm.
Americans.
Yeah.
And so, um, that is a little bit of history. And then the Braceros program that happened, where they would bring people from Mexico to work the fields. And then it was kind of this, like, come here for a little bit and work, and then you can leave, and then, and then come back. But there was never any really actual care for the people that were working the fields. And so, but then there's all these immigrants that are coming to the United States legally, right? This is a program put on by the US government. So the immigration is not like, here's ABC, right? And here's how people get here. Like, then we also have, right, like people from Cuba, which for a long time, they would have to escape, right, from Cuba
Mhm.
and go through the ocean, which that's a whole different story, right? Like, and then once they made it to the US, once they stepped on land, they could claim refugee status, I believe,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. True. This
you
is
know,
true. Yes.
and so then they would be able to get their U.S. citizenship.
Mhm.
However, then there's, I mean, asylum seekers is a whole, like everything is so different. Then there's the southern border with Mexico,
Mhm.
and so that is a whole different story. Um, and the way that that group of people is treated and the dangers that come along with it. In recent years, there's also been a lot of people who are starting to. So, right, when we think of people migrating to the US through the US border, we always think that the journey starts at the US border. But in recent years, there's actually been a lot of journalist work relating to the Darien Gap, which is
What is it called? A Therian gap?
the Darien. It's
Darien.
yes,
Okay.
the Darien
Darien.
Gap.
Okay.
And that is the name of the jungle that connects Panama and Colombia.
Okay.
And it's one of the most beautiful places, but also one of the most biodiverse places like on the planet.
Mhm.
Indigenous groups still live in there, but it's mostly inaccessible to the Western world.
Hmm.
However, in the last few years, well, maybe in the last almost 15 years, people from all over the world started coming to the Darien Gap in Colombia to
Mhm.
cross to go to Panama, and then from Panama keep going up through Central
Wow.
America to then make it to the U.S.
West.
border.
Wow.
Yes, and so
And
there
that's
is
we have these large caravan. Is that where the caravans start, or
well,
some of them,
so
or just different troops of people? Yeah.
yeah, so there are caravans that start usually in Central America and Guatemala, Salvador, Honduras,
Okay.
and make it through Mexico. But the Darien Gap is unique in that people from all over the world are traveling
Hmm.
to Colombia to cross the Darien Gap, which is incredibly dangerous to do. And so I think, like the story of migration is just so complicated.
It's
Like
so
there's
complicated.
not one,
Like, oh, they're in Mexico in Tijuana, and they want to come on up. Let's go today. That's not how
yes,
people are. And there are Kenyans that come from
yes,
Africa. There are people from China that are coming up through South. So it is. You are right. It is just not a one story fits all. But I believe that we have to come to some kind of agreement where people can get some type of help, because these people they're coming here for a reason. They're not just coming just to come, right? They're coming for a reason. And they're coming, like you said, in Peru, it collapsed. And if we don't be careful in America, we're going to collapse, not because of immigrants. It is because of the ill-advised people that we have running the country. And I think we must do something to help. So what should we do for immigrants, those people who are undocumented? I work with a lot of students who are undocumented and different things. What will we tell them? How do we give them hope in this time right now?
yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things for me is when it comes specifically to folks who experience the United States as undocumented people, I think is one of the things that we really need to care for is their mental health.
Mm,
Because
that's good.
the yeah, because in a little bit, it's like the history of ICE, right? Like,
Mhm.
ICE wasn't an institution until 2003 when George W. Bush was the president.
Okay.
This is when ICE became established.
Mhm.
So it's a very young institution compared, right, to like the FBI or the CIA or other programs, right?
Mhm.
And so, but from especially, right, like think of like kids, teenagers who either are undocumented themselves or their parents are, they might be born in the US and their parents are undocumented, right? From a young age in immigrant spaces,
Mhm.
we hear that conversation happening, and it's not even just a political um, conversation, it's also a religious conversation, right? Because it's that sense of like God is going to provide for us, God is going to protect us, but who is God protecting us from?
Mhm.
And it's from ICE, right? Like in Spanish, la migra. And it's that,
Yeah, it's ice.
yeah, la migra. And so, so imagine like a young child hearing that with
Mhm.
that fear, constant fear, either for themselves or for their family members, right? um, and thinking, is today the day that I go to school and I come back and my parents are gone? citizen,
Yeah.
right? And for years, that's kind of like ongoing fear.
Is
And
it? That's something that people have always said with. See, I would have never in my black mind imagined that's what young kids are going through.
yes,
Wow.
absolutely. Yeah,
Mm,
and now, of course, like, and um, absolutely, there should be a focus specifically of what's happening in the United States currently because it's so obscene compared to the last 20 years.
mhm.
Um, but it is, like that is exactly what's happening right now. Kids are going to school
And
and
again, said,
they come home and their parents are gone. And what does that do to a body? What does that do to a brain? What does that do to a
yeah,
spirit, right? And so so multi-layer, right? Like depression, anxiety, all those
it's
things that
horrible.
come.
I mean, you think about the black slaves, and I equate that
Mhm.
when they would snatch their kids, they would sell
Yes.
them all. Or you come home, everybody's gone, or your daddy's swinging on a tree. It's so many. Mental health is so important. I've never thought about that. Mental health is very important. So I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, 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 absolutely. And I mean, a lot of my research while I was at Union was actually
Mhm.
focused um, on realizing that I believe that the first, like in modern terms,
Mhm.
the first undocumented people to live in the United States were
Mhm.
actually Black Americans
Mhm.
because they were denied the right of citizenship,
That's true.
even though they were being born in the United States, right? And so, yeah,
They were
of
not
course,
human. They were not humans at the
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and we see that
Not
there's
human quotes. Yes.
absolutely quote unquote.
Mhm.
And we see that, historically, there's court cases where Black Americans, would go and say like, "Hey, I deserve to be a U.S. citizen," and
Yeah.
of course, shut down. Absolutely,
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so I absolutely there is so much of a correlation because in some ways it's a s- it it's similar, right? Like it's the ongoing history and the ongoing story of illegality. What makes a body illegal in a system within the nation state, right? And so that continues to change, right? Like and when I say illegal, because that's the other thing, right? Like we see it used in a very derogatory way, right? Like those illegals, that in even for me, like that is triggering sometimes, right? So I very much say what makes a body illegal because somebody is putting that on a person. There's
Mhm.
no way that a human being is illegal, you know? Um,
Let me ask you this. Let me push back because I know
yeah.
somebody might be listening. This is Sunday morning, so we got maybe a lot of conservative Christians. You never know. When they say, "Oh, well, they're not following the process, so they are illegal." So they're
Mhm.
not following the process. They don't care for the process. They're just making our money, and not and so how do you answer that part?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the misconceptions about immigration is that there is a process
Mhm.
and that there is, sometimes people might use the language of immigration court.
Yeah.
Immigration court does not exist. Um, there's not one specific place where you're like, oh, this is immigration court. That's not real.
Well,
It's just
I have to tell you. Well, I work. I can't. But there is an immigration court.
yes.
There is court. But explain what you mean more.
What I mean is like there's not like one specific building where it's like, let me go and ask, these people
Yeah.
specifically, you know.
Mhm.
So yes, there is immigration court, but there's not like
Mhm.
like one specific place in every city where you're able to walk in and be like, hi, I would like to,
Right. Like
I
the
would,
tax office. Let me go talk to somebody and figure out what I need to do. Well, maybe
yes.
we should do that so people can figure out what to do. That's a good idea.
Well, and there is no process. There is no, especially once somebody is in the United States.
Uh-huh.
Also because, like legality is so um, almost confusing in some ways, right? Um, the part that makes somebody commit a crime
Mhm.
in the process of migration is if they cross the U.S. border. That
That's
is the
but it's
considered
a
to be the
civil crime, right? It's not a criminal
yes.
crime, right?
So then, yeah, so then being in the United States as an undocumented person,
Okay. Mhm.
that is a civil
Civil issue.
yep. And
Let's
so
say
it
issue, not a crime. It's a civil issue. That's
Yeah.
what.
So
Okay.
it's considered almost the way, like if you jaywalk,
Yeah, that's the civil.
it's
That
the same exact,
okay.
like on the US legal system, is the same
Mhm.
exact, um, you know, kind of like
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
comparison. Yeah.
Right.
So
So
that's
now,
one thing.
but now they're making it such a big deal. Immigrants they're stealing, they're killing, they're doing all of this stuff. And when records show that it's not the immigrants who are doing the crimes,
Yeah.
not on the level that. Now, don't get me wrong, we have crime in every single
Yeah.
uh undocumented, documented, everybody, we have that. It doesn't matter, but they are not the majority, which what these people on the other side of God who are saying we're not gonna say the names on the radio station. All right, this is on radio.
Absolutely.
So on the other side of God that say they're for God, evangelicals who are saying that they are not. And so what should we, I don't know. It's so confusing, but yeah. How do we fix that? What do we do? How do we get to the point of immigration that we need a centralized system where people can go, where they can get help, where this is the process, sign up, and let's go where we need to go. We need to do. We need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for years, I don't know if you've heard, the immigration rights movement
Okay.
always asked for a pathway to citizenship,
Mm,
right? And the reason is because there is no pathway to citizenship. There
thank
is no application. There is no anything, right? Like the last time there was amnesty was in the 1980s. And so there hasn't been amnesty since then. And also, because in some ways, if you think about it,
you. Mhm.
um, the United States needs undocumented immigrants because
Go ahead and say it.
well, because of capitalism,
Capitalism.
because
The tentacles of capitalism is what Dr. West said. The tentacles that are messing up our society is what he said.
well, because think about this, right? Like, and this is like a made
Yes.
up person, but it's
Mhm.
a combination of scenarios of people that I know,
Yeah.
including myself in some ways, right? But an undocumented person comes, and let's say this person, right now there's so much conversation, right, around um the fields, right? People who work in the fields, right?
Yeah.
Or people who work in factories.
Mhm.
So let's say person A goes and works, but there's this thing where undocumented migrants and immigrants are able to get a number where they're able to pay taxes through with that number. It's not
Mhm.
a social security number. It's just a
It's
number
like
that
a
they.
CPN number or something
I'm
like that.
sorry.
It's like a CPN number or something like that. Like
Yeah, almost like that. Yeah,
okay,
it's
okay,
and it's so funny because I realized that I only know how to pronounce it in Spanish, but I was like,
okay,
what are the letters in English?
okay. Yeah,
Actually,
it's like CPN, which is like a social security number, but it's not. Yeah.
yes,
Hmm.
And so, first of all, the United States knows.
They know.
They
Every,
know that
right.
person A is in the United States,
Right.
working, paying
Hmm.
taxes, putting money into Social Security, all those things.
Which they can't get when they turn 65.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
So where's all that money going
Yeah.
going to, right?
Hmm.
Um According to the latest records, there's around 11 million people who are undocumented in the United States.
Okay.
That could be lower, that could be higher, because of the way the census works, and some people will not fill out the census out of fear, which makes complete sense.
Right.
So that number could be up or down. But that is 11 million people who are working, who are paying into a system that they will never be able to use,
Yeah.
especially in red states. You know, Undocumented people don't qualify for any. I think in some, like, when I think of New York, I think some laws are a little bit different,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
But when in a red state, it's like undocumented people don't have access to food stamps, to even like right, like medical care is a lot more complicated, right? Like all those things, like their health insurance, that's not a thing. All those things, right? That are part of the human experience, right? Like people need medical care.
People need help. Yeah.
Absolutely. Then it comes into like the question of labor laws. Um, it so many. When I first graduated high school, I actually used to work for an organization
Mhm.
that worked with migrant women who had been abused in many different ways.
Mhm.
um, it was devastating. I also sometimes I think back and I'm like, oh my goodness, I was 18, 19, and showing up with, I was a kid, and I was like, well, so I'll be there, I'll translate, I'll
Yeah.
do what I need to do,
Right. Yeah.
But I remember like some of those stories of, I mean, it was so, it was deep violence
Yeah.
against, a human person,
Human person.
where
Yeah.
the dignity was, where was their dignity?
Yeah.
It wasn't even there anymore. Um and a lot of the people working the fields, people working in factories,
Mhm.
because they are afraid to lose their job, or to be,
Yeah.
because how are they going to provide for their families, right? They don't report the violence that they experience.
Because yeah.
So even though they are legally protected, but
Mhm.
because of their situation, they won't report what is going on. So
It's a
there's
sad
so
thing.
much hurt and abuse and all those things.
You're right. They're humans, and humans should be taken care. And we always say, "In God we trust. We love the Lord. We love Jesus, and He's our friend." But you treat people like doormats, and the real thing is, it is slave labor. It's slave wages. It's slave labor, and you're using these people for your capitalism. It is the tentacles of capitalism. Is that they?
Yeah,
What Dr. West says, and it is. People choose money over human beings, and it's a sad reality.
absolutely.
But it is what has been happening for 500 years. It has
Yes.
happened for 500 years. It's nothing new in this country. We know what certain people are. They are about money. They're not about the human experience. They're not about helping people. But we thank God for people like you who are helping people. What do you say to? I want to switch gears right now.
Hmm.
We have immigrants in this country. You mentioned Cubans. We're talking about the election right now. You mentioned, and they have this idea of is they align themselves with whiteness and thinking that that is going to save them. I personally believe the immigrants who did vote this election, it was a lot of Hispanic voters who voted for that man and put them in this situation. What do you say to these people? Because they always say, well, the Hispanic, Latino, whatever, they is more conservative. We have conservative beliefs and values, and that's who we're aligned with. But he told you that he didn't like you and he was going to send you back.
Yeah.
But we're voted for money. It was for the money. Talk to from because I know you're on both sides of the experience. And so talk to me about, what that mindset is. Not that you think that way, but
Yeah.
you have your feet on the ground in those areas.
Yeah.
What about?
Absolutely. So, I guess also, for clarification, if somebody can't see me on the radio, I am a Black Latina, and
And she will tell you she's black. You're like, how you identify black? Oh, okay. But you are. You're a sister. You're a sister for real.
And the reason why I say that
Mhm.
is because there um the socio-political environment of Latin America is marked by whiteness.
Mhm.
And it's impossible, right? Like when I think of even myself, right? When I came to the United States,
Mhm.
I already had a faith that I believed in.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I call it indoctrination now, but at the time it was my faith, right? I already had experienced racism as a Black little girl in Peru, I already had experienced sexism because I'm a woman, and so I was at that point I was a little girl, so it was like girls do this, gender norms, all those things, right? Like, I've already experienced all of that in Latin America, and then I come to the United States,
Mhm.
and my being the person that I was
Mhm.
didn't reset to zero,
Mhm.
right? It came with a million experiences already.
Right.
And the reason why I say this is because that is what's happened to people
Mm.
who come from Latin America and the Caribbean and have and now live in the United States, right?
You can't reset to zero.
Yes, right.
Mhm.
And again, going back to the PR thing, right? in the United States, racism ended because Obama became president in 2008, right?
Mhm.
Like, this is the PR move. That's not real, of course,
It's
right?
not real. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
absolutely. But also, and because of the lack of information regarding the real history of what's happened in this country,
Mhm.
there is that sense of like, outside of the US, people think, and I truly like this makes my heart hurt. Like all of the stereotypes regarding Black people, that Black people are lazy, that Black
Ghetto,
people are
loud, all this.
all those
Yeah,
things,
all the things.
those
Yeah.
beliefs
Mhm.
exist outside of lying America regarding Black Americans, or
Even in
certainly
Africa.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
of Hollywood and all those things,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Right.
and your good PR team. So,
Mhm.
you know, so all those things
Yeah.
are there. And of course, then you have in Latin America, in Latin America is so giant, like I'll say for Peru, there's class, there's race, there is education, there, all those things that play
Yeah.
a role, and there is religion,
Mhm.
um, you know, and so I'll separate two things. One, um, in Latin America, there is the proximity to whiteness
Mm.
is ever present,
Mm.
you know?
Explain
And
that to me. So we're going into
yes.
grad school. We're going to Ivy League terms, y'all. People listening. Proximity. What does proximity to whiteness mean?
Because whiteness is a system, right?
Mm.
But whiteness in itself is a system that doesn't live only in the United States,
Right.
because Latin America was colonized by the Spanish, the French, the Netherlands, and a little bit, technically, in some ways, the UK,
Mm.
and so that is like full on European, right?
Right.
And now we have different, our caste system just looks a little bit different because of the terms that we use. Somewhere it's just like because it's in Spanish and not in English, but
Yeah.
it's a very similar in some ways and not, all those things are happening, right? So and recently I had a conversation with a professor who teaches in Peru. She's a Black woman, and I said, "Hey, like I'm looking for Black Peruvian scholars,
Mhm.
specifically regarding religion." And we talked a little bit about race in Peru. And she said, "Carla, one of the things that you need to know about Peru is
Mhm.
that how here we have like quantum theory, uh, like where people say like if you have one blood or one drop of blood or
Yeah.
black." You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah. One black
blood,
that makes you black.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
then that makes you Black.
Yeah.
Okay, in Peru, people think if you have one drop of a white person,
That makes you okay.
that makes you white.
I think it's called the grandfather clause or something like that, or whatever they. I know,
Yes,
something like
I
that. Something.
know.
Like, yeah. 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 Something. Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
and so then you have like, is I was like, what do you mean? So I'm like having this conversation with her, because in some ways, I was in Peru 3 years ago, but I hadn't been to Peru before that for almost no for 21 years.
Long time.
So yeah, it was a lot of reconnecting and
And
learning
the
and all.
Carla today is not the Carla was in 2000. Totally different person.
No,
You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
yeah. Mhm.
And so anyway, but so those dynamics are happening.
Yeah.
And then so there is that sense of like, and it is because white people in Latin America do hold the power, of
Right.
course, and that
And that
is,
was so odd because I remember talking to you in Little Rock, Arkansas about that, and you had to explain to me about the European Peruvian, how we have the white people here, how you all have them there. And it's so for me, I couldn't get it, but then I saw something. I was like, oh, you what, so that it's a very they run, they colonize, right? They take over, and people
yeah.
want
And anti-blackness in Latin America is so alive. So much so that in Argentinian history, actually,
to.
there is a thing called blanqueamiento, which translates to whitening almost.
Mm,
And it was very much an effort from the Argentinian government to get rid of Black people in Argentina, which did
mm.
not work. There are Black people in Argentina,
You
but
mean killing them or just whitening out the blood? Line.
Just simply not having a black population. Yeah. And so
Right.
for a long time, they restricted immigration to Argentina. They
Mhm.
only accepted people from European countries,
That's crazy.
because they refused to, to
Darker
have,
culture.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they, I mean, yeah, that's like the history. Those are the histories that are happening, right, in Latin America. And so that is one thing that's happening. But then the other part is the religion part,
Mhm.
which is, yes, in a lot of ways, Latin America is conservative in its belief. One thing is that, and I think the demographics are changing
Mhm.
in the last 20 years or so.
Yeah.
But for a big part of the time, um, Latin America is Catholic. And so the Catholic Church
That
has,
is huge.
yes,
The Catholic Church is huge. Shout
yes,
out to the new Pope who lived in Peru, right? Not for a
yes, yep.
while.
And so,
Mhm.
a lot of the liberation, right? I study liberation theologies, right? A lot of
Yeah.
the liberation theologians are actually Catholic,
Mm.
they're not Protestant
Yeah.
theologians, and so Latin America is Catholic, which comes with its own set of rules,
Yeah.
even though Latin America is also very much like what at Union people call double belonging, or, that kind of idea where there's multiple religions at play,
Yeah.
because there are so many African based religions
Mm.
happening and indigenous
Right.
spiritualities happening,
Symbolism of it
yeah,
all.
yeah.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
on paper,
Mhm.
Latin America is
Is
Catholic,
Catholic.
you know?
It's so interesting because I'm in this one class now where we talk about the pluralism of all the religions and how it's African, it's indigenous, it's Mayan, and this, and and they held it throughout slavery and throughout colonization. They would keep it and they would disguise it in Catholicism and
Yes.
other religions. So it's so amazing how you could try to wipe out the history of somebody, but we still hold those things to us now. We still hold them, and it's such a blessing to have a little bit of something left because I'm so far removed from Africa. I don't even know, so far removed. But listen, what is religion to you? Faith. You've been at Union for a while. You've been in church your whole life. What does faith mean to you on this journey and helping people and helping immigrants? What
Yeah.
has it done for you?
Yeah. So, but okay, I do want to answer that, but I do want to finish that
I'm
thought.
sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
No,
Yes.
no, you're all good.
Go ahead.
Mostly because I think it will really like open up some of that
Yes. Go ahead.
that conversation. But what I mean to say is that yes, Latin America is very conservative in a lot of ways. But also in the 20th century,
Mhm.
um, there happened to be a growth of missionary work. I
Mm.
missionary quote unquote, because I have a lot of trouble with that term,
Mhm.
because it specifically is white evangelical missionary work that is
Mhm.
going on in Latin America, and it keeps going. It's an active program right now. It has not stopped, right? Maybe it slowed down a little bit during COVID, but that's basically it. And so think like Southern Baptist Church. The Southern Baptist Church is one of the biggest
Mhm.
group like churches that sends missionaries to not only Latin America, also Africa, right? Asia. Um, but the Southern Baptist Church is the racist church, right? Like I'm just gonna say it. And
Right.
so its history comes from racism
Absolutely.
from the beginning,
Yeah.
And so, but think like even other white evangelical institutions that read the Bible literally, that have fundamentalist beliefs, that separated themselves from other groups of people because they didn't want to minister with Black Americans, you know, all those people, all those denominations are
Mhm.
sending people to Latin America
Right.
to save people, because fundamentalist Christianity doesn't believe that Catholics are Christians.
Mm.
And so in Latin America, and so people are getting saved for
I
going
can see our face on the radio. Yeah, we were like,
yes,
okay.
from the Catholic Church to
Right.
the Protestant Christian Church.
Right.
And that separation,
Mhm.
because white evangelical theology is all about the spirit and the soul. It's not about the body, right? Like, so Imagine you go into a community that lives an embodied experience, right?
Mhm.
Whether it is like through food, through community, through laughter, through dance, right? Like that is what Latin America is,
Yeah.
and through faith and religion, right?
Yeah.
Um, and now they tell them, oh, actually, God is not concerned with that. God is concerned with the salvation of your soul,
Mm.
and everything will, like taking verses out of context where it's the idea of um there will be no weeping, no pain in heaven. But right now,
Right
you
now.
know
Right.
like right now it is what it is.
Hmm.
um but that's of course not true, right? Like we know that rich white men are living the life right now. They don't have to wait for no weeping and no pain and no shame and until they get to
Get
heaven.
health care. You can go buy food. You can buy a new bed. You can do what you need to
Yes,
do. But
absolutely. You have
you wait till
healthcare.
you get to heaven to get yours, boy. That's how you.
Yes,
They did the
you
same
know,
thing with slaves. Same thing.
absolutely.
But go ahead. And we still carry this white evangelical demonic idea of Christianity to this day.
Yes.
But go
And
ahead,
this
Fred.
is the Christianity that has been taken to Latin America.
Absolutely.
So then, when people from Latin America, I cannot speak right for other continents. I cannot
Well,
speak.
we know it's
Sometimes,
happening in Africa. We know it's happening.
exactly.
We know it's all over.
Yes.
It is spread like a cancer. It
Yes.
happens.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And then people migrate to the United States,
Yeah, with this idea.
and these ideas are already in them.
Yeah,
You know?
it's in them. It's rooted in them.
Yes.
And the thing about it is, okay, thank you for explaining that, but keep going too. But I get, but I understand now because even Black America is the same way. We have a person running for mayor, and they are stuck on this one person who had, and you're stuck with this white evangelical idea of it, and people cannot change. They just can't change. But it comes with the new generation like us, where we have to change it. We have to get the liberation. So we talk about James Cone, Dr. Cone, and this liberation theology and freeing ourselves from this ignorance. But go ahead, you
Yeah.
don't have to preach it.
Well, no, absolutely. I agree. That's what's happening. Yeah. And
Mhm.
a lot of the times, like I personally, um, I love the Black church, but I didn't grow up in the Black church. I
Mhm.
grew up in a white evangelical theology. And
Mhm.
so that is the reason why I often don't critique
Yeah,
the Black church, because even though I love the Black church, I never want it to come as a shameful like I'm not shaming the Black
right.
church.
Yeah,
um and so that's why I always, like I always let Black Americans speak. I'm like, it's not,
let them
this
say
is,
it.
but I will call out white evangelicals left and right, because I'm like, y'all know what you did, and maybe you don't know, but I know what you did, and I'm gonna
Right,
tell you.
right, exactly. Yeah.
And so yes, but I agree, and so all of that is at him. So
Mm.
when people go to vote,
Mm.
these are the beliefs they are holding, right? When it comes to reproduction rights, when it comes to marriage equality, when it comes even to legality, because of the misreading of Romans 13, right? When it comes to authority and like you have to follow authority, and it's just like this is a little bit confusing because so many people in our community experience what is illegality
Right.
placed on them, and so it's a very complex conversation, just because it is like a circle of whiteness, even if the person themselves is not white, right? Like it because we know that whiteness is a system and
Mm.
an idea in itself, that very is very much alive in every system that we know currently. So,
What would you tell somebody that would like to free themselves from this idea that we're just
ooh.
what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so I don't know that we've ever talked about this, but
Mm.
like I am very much like somebody who grew up. I didn't know this until my 20s when
Mhm.
I realized that the first literature that I'd ever read about the Bible, like any like books, I remember my first chapter book was a book about marriage, and it was written by a fundamentalist couple, like from the United States, and I had it in Spanish. My parents had it in Spanish, so that was the first book I read as like a 6, 7 year old. I don't know why. You
Really?
know, like, that's a different question. But so many of the books that my parents had were
Mhm.
just white evangelical theology, and that's what I was reading. And
Mhm.
then when I moved to the United States, my parents went to a Spanish speaking Pentecostal church.
Mhm.
It was a black and brown Pentecostal church,
Right.
and like that's a whole other conversation. But
Pentecostal people, they run around the church, right?
yes, yes.
Just for y'all who don't know Pentecostal is, Pentecostal people are they run around. If you see them on YouTube, Instagram, they're running around the church, running around. I'm a
Yes.
Baptist, Black Baptist. You better sit down somewhere. You praise the Lord. That's all you know. You might shout a little bit, but you ain't gonna run around the church.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, and so but during that time I remember being like, I just don't feel like this is what I believe in all the
Mhm.
time, because there is a lot of overlap.
Mhm.
um and finally in my 20s I ended up in, of course, a white evangelical college group.
Mhm.
And I remember being like, this makes complete sense to me.
Mhm.
This is how church is for me. This is
Mhm.
the music that I worship with.
Yeah.
This is the kind of interpretation that I get from the Bible, you
Okay.
know. And it's not until in 2014 or so, I was like 24, I think, at the
Mhm.
time. Suddenly a lot of things started happening right in the country. And it, all the red lights were going on, like, alert, 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 something is terribly wrong. And I didn't have the language to communicate what I
Mhm.
was thinking, theologically,
Mhm.
politically.
Yeah. Mhm.
I grew up with the idea of like, we're not political because, like the white evangelical church in a lot of ways claims to not be political because that's a matter of the earth and we're concerned with the above, like with
Mhm.
heaven. And so, and I remember being like, I know y'all say that, but I know my lived experience is that politics really affect who I
Absolutely.
am, like how I live my life.
And if you really want to know about it, they were telling the truth. Jesus was a politician in his own way because he was speaking up for the least of these. He was
Yes,
flipping over tables. He was telling people what they needed to hear. That's politics.
absolutely,
That's straight up politics. No,
Yeah.
you ain't. My daddy said you ain't supposed to be doing that. You gonna have to fix that, bro. That's
Yeah.
a whole. That's how mad Jesus was talking to me. Like, but he
Yeah,
was. He was
yeah. And
political.
so absolutely.
Mhm.
And so I grew up in that, and so when all the alerts started going off, I remember thinking, who is God? And does God
Mhm.
care for people like me? Really? Does God
Right.
really care for people like me? I remember hearing a sermon that really, like, put something in me, but the pastor, middle class, upper class,
Mhm.
white man, says from the stage, well, like us as middle class Americans, and then keeps going with his sermon. And I remember thinking, oh, then today's sermon is not for me because I'm
Right.
none of those things, like,
Mhm.
um, and anyway, and so so it was like things like that that started
Yeah.
making me question, who is God? What is God doing? Who is Jesus? What
Yeah.
does Jesus care about? When I started bringing up the topic of immigration around those spaces,
Mhm.
people were very ignorant about it, in the
Mhm.
sense of like just not knowing. I don't mean it as an insult, like very
No,
much like
absolutely.
they
Yeah,
just didn't
absolutely.
know.
No.
And so so that was one thing, but that was all of my existence in the
Mhm.
United States. Not everyone in the United States specifically.
Yeah.
All of my existence is controlled by this this illegality that is placed on my body,
Yeah.
right? Like everything. Like if I could have gone to school in my 20s, I
Mhm.
would have had a PhD by now. And that is the reality. But
Absolutely.
because of all the things that are not letting me go to school,
Mhm.
I had to wait until now. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I got to experience union at this time of my life. And the reality is that I would have a PhD by now. And
Yeah.
so I think of stuff like that. I think of in 2016, my mom moved back to Peru to take care of my grandma.
Mhm.
And because of her immigration status at the time, she
Mhm.
still can't come back.
You can't.
And you know, like
What
my
did they
mom,
bar her from the country, or is it like she can't?
so
Not to
once
get all
you
into your business, but you mentioned it,
yeah,
so
so once you leave the country, you have to wait at least 10 years to ask for like forgiveness, quote unquote. That's like a very simplified version, you know. Um, and so yeah, you know, so I haven't I mean, I got to travel to go to Peru
okay,
through a special permit
okay.
um in 2022. Actually 3 years ago, like basically around this date.
Mhm.
Um and but before that, I hadn't seen my mom for 7 years, you
Wow,
know, and I was there for 3 months. So in reality, she has missed basically 10 years of my life.
that's a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know. And of course, like my dad is here and they're still married, you know, like all those things that are into play that um my entire life is
yeah,
affected by theologies that form ideas regarding immigration, right? And I remember being like, don't y'all care for the stranger? Isn't that and like to me that was so clear? Also, because in the Spanish speaking church, that is a very clear statement. Like
right.
God cares for the immigrant, you know? Um,
An immigrant.
yeah, you
Yeah.
know, and
Mhm.
so all those things
All those things.
that were happening. And so and I say all of that to say that I know what it's like to have white evangelical theology.
Mhm.
And is not easy because one of the things that white evangelical theology provides for a specific, I'll say for me,
Mhm.
but I think a lot of people can maybe identify with this. There are theologies, specifically fundamentalist theologies or literal interpretations of the Bible, that provide certainty.
Mhm.
And for somebody who, right, like I think of in the United States, right, like, yes, I am an immigrant, but I'm also Black and I'm a woman,
Yeah.
and all those things, right? And how I live in a lot of uncertainty all the time,
Mhm.
and having a set of rules that tells you like this is what you need to do and you'll get to heaven, that
Mhm.
sounds like certainty, right? Like the idea of a God who is in control, like a very you know, like God is all powerful and God is sovereign, very Calvinist interpretation, you know.
Mhm.
It's like, well, that sounds nice because then that means that even when I feel out of control, somebody else is in control. But that's not a true statement, right? Like I don't believe that anymore. But
Mhm.
at the time it was like, well, I don't have a control over anything in my life, you know?
Mhm.
And so of course that certainty was like this is what I need to be able to keep living, you know? And so I think of that. I think of the ways that it like that, right? That it tells you how to live in some like it's so why evangelical theology is so interested in behavior. And
Mhm.
so it's very much like, right, like the whole idea of like don't sleep with anyone before marriage, like all those rules that come with that,
Mhm.
you know, fornication, adultery, all the things, right?
Right.
And then even with money, right? It's like 10% goes to the church. And it's like, but where did that come from?
Mhm.
And is that theology sound? Is that theology coming from the biblical text or where, you know, did Jesus say that? And Jesus didn't. Jesus said everything, share everything with each other,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
And so just that kind of like,
He
right?
said, "Sell all your stuff." Lord, I don't.
Yeah, you exactly, you know, and I'm like, oh, I don't know about that, Jesus.
You can follow me. Come on, follow me. Oh, Jesus.
But you know what I'm saying? And so, but there is that like
Yeah.
sense of certainty. And so I'm not gonna pretend, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna sit here and be like, it was easy, just leave. No, it was so
Yeah.
hard.
Absolutely.
You know, I lost my community when I left in 2016.
Mhm.
I lost my community. I lost you know, and those are some of the red flags also, right? Like once you leave a place, all your friends suddenly disappear. That is a red flag, you know? um, and so yeah, so I think about that, right? And I mean, of course, I have very close friends who, you know, stuck with me and, you know, they're still in my life. But a lot, right? Like you go from going to church every Sunday, and at the time I was the only Black person who went every Sunday to church at this church that I was going to at the time in Michigan. Um, I was the only Black person in leadership, and I
Mm.
was the only immigrant on leadership. And I left, and it was like, okay, and I was like, y'all, I gave y'all a
Mm.
a big chunk of my life,
All
and of
right.
course,
See you
like
later.
yeah, at the time, I really thought I was serving the Lord, like
Yeah,
this was my heart toward it.
but you were serving the Lord. You were.
Yeah,
I mean, from my perspective, if you were working in the church and you were doing it with your heart, you were serving the Lord.
yeah, but I appreciate you saying that. And I also think, it's just it was hard to leave, like these are the people that I loved.
Yeah.
And of course, like now as time, it's been almost 10 years now, and it's gotten so much easier and all those things. And I actually do. I praise Spirit
Mhm.
for the Black American church,
Mhm.
and for like I think of like Dr. Otis Moss. I think, of course, of theologians like Dr. James Cone, Dr. Loris Williams, Katie Cannon. But I mean, it is. Oh my gosh, I have to say it. M. Shaw Copeland.
Mhm.
I love her. Um, like their words is what gave me life in those days, right? Like
That's
when
so
I was like, maybe I'm done with God, because is God
mm.
an oppressive white man? And they
Ooh,
were like, hey,
wow, that's deep right there.
whiteness doesn't get to claim God.
Absolutely.
So, and so anyway, so I'm not gonna pretend it's easy, but I will say that there is so much more joy in pursuing liberation, in pursuing not just for myself, right? Because it's for the communities that I'm a part of, and even communities I'm not a part of, like yeah, I
And
think
it's freeing to be liberated. It's
mhm,
freeing to free because there's so much more beyond the restrictive narrative of white Christianity. I just made
yes.
it up. It's not good to be. I just made it, but it is so.
Yes.
It's like
It's so nice.
Jesus wants me to live abundantly, and this is how I need to live, and it's so freeing.
Yes, to
Oh,
live, to
I'm not,
live.
I'm not supposed to be restricted. I'm not supposed to be broke. I can't get that house on the hill because he's gonna give it to me. Well, that's just how I think. You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
have to be this poor black person here on earth. I don't have to be why these people getting all the money and doing what they do. No, God, I can have it here, and I can have it on the other side. That's what I believe. We run out of time. Any final thoughts? What an amazing show today. I mean, you've given us so much perspective on just everything. In my opinion, you've just blessed us with just this. Immigration is a tough thing in America, and I hope somebody listens to this show, and I hope they get uh, a sense of relief and help. And then also tell us how we can, where people can. Well, you said there's no help really, but where can people go? Do you have any resources for people who are struggling?
Oh, yes. So for sure, I would say follow the Undaku Black Network.
And Dr. Black.
Yes. Oh, I actually today I saved also a picture because
Yeah.
there is specifically for Harlem.
Mhm.
Let me see. I would say, oh, immigrants are ny.org.
Okay.
I would say, and oh, I cannot think of the name of there's an organization in Harlem on 125th, I believe, or 129, one of those.
Text me all
Um,
that information. We're gonna put it at the bottom of the
yeah,
screen. So
yes,
people,
yes, yes. I'll share it
yeah,
for you.
text me all of that information. And are
Yes.
you available to talk to people, or can people reach out to you, or maybe they want to bring you speaking engagements or anything like that? Can they contact
Oh
you?
yeah. Thank you for asking that. It's so funny. I can't, because I was in school, I took a break.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I do presentations and that sort of thing, and also just converse with people too. Yeah, but my usually you can find me on Instagram at Dear Karla. I also have a website, dearkarla.com, or my Substack, which is dearkarla.substack.com. So it's always Dear Karla.
I'm gonna check out dearcarla.com. I didn't know you had a website. Well, great. Well, give us
It
any
needs
final
to be
thoughts.
updated, but yes,
Yes,
it's
yes.
there. It's
Give us any
there.
final thoughts you may have, dear Karla. Give us any final thoughts you may have this time.
Honestly, first, thank you so much for having me. I had so much, I mean, in a way, this has been so refreshing to have this conversation with you. Yeah, I honestly would say to keep asking questions. Especially even like looking into the history of citizenship in the United States. If you look up citizenship history or timeline, it'll give you a list of all the things that have happened immigration wise and naturalization. It's pretty, it's very simple because it's a timeline. And yeah, that'll give you some insight into how we got here to what's going on today. And honestly, especially like for folks who are spiritual or believe in God, I think yes, these are very dark times for all of us, even
Sure.
people who believe that it's not dark times for them. It's a dark time for all of us. Um, and so just, just keep hoping. It sounds so cheesy, but yeah, like, and also because we have to outlive everybody who, you know,
Mhm.
is producing this tyranny. So we have to stay here. We have to live. And that what you said, Phil, actually, I that's one of my favorite things, and is to say to live, continue to live. We didn't come here to die. Jesus didn't come here to die. He came to live. Yeah, and so that's what I would say.
Well, thank you, Karla. We really appreciate you. DearKarla.com. Go check her out. Hold tight for me in the green room, all right? Hold tight for me, all right? Thank you to my dear friend, Dear Karla. Go to dearkarla.com. Listen, go live abundantly. Listening to those people who are listening and watching, if you are an immigrant, there is a safe place for you. There is refuge in churches. There's refuge with your neighbors. Go reach out for resources. Don't be afraid, but be cautious and be vigilant. And we're praying for each of you. You're listening to Phil and Friends right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Go to dearkarla.com. Y'all request her to come on, do some lectures and things like that. I'll see y'all later. Peace.